Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 9 of the Blues News podcast. Today I'm here with Mike from the Sutton Podcast. Firstly, Mike, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Perfect, no worries. Well, me and Mike were just saying this and it was a bit of a shock to both of us really. But Southend actually put something out the other day saying that this was the first ever time in our history that we've played Sutton. So, you could say this is a one-of-a-kind podcast, never done before. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
yes,
SUFC versus SUFC.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Battle of the Uniteds as well. So yeah, obviously a one-of-a-kind podcast today. So that's not bad. So firstly, Mike, we'll talk a bit about your start to the season. So obviously it's a bit of a strange thing to talk about, I guess, because it's up and downs. First game of the season, it was like a disappointing 1-1 draw to Tamworth. Did you think that was disappointing, the opening day of the season?
There's good and bad on it. I'm sorry to waffle, but they've just come up. They've kind of had the same team for 2 years. They've got promoted twice, so they know how to grind out results. It was a hot day, and the pitch was not watered, so we know those 3G pitches very well, and our style needed it to be a bit more zippy than it was. It was a lot slower than we were hoping for. I know everyone kind of thinks the 3G pitches, they're all the same, but no, they're definitely not. And you can tailor it. But first game away, you're not going to overly argue with it. Yes, we would have preferred a win, but I wasn't too downhearted. Some people were, but I weren't.
Yeah, well, because the weird bit is the second game of the season was a 5-0 win against 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗎. And I imagine you knew I was going to talk about this, but, I was just confused as to how, you can go from a 1-1 draw against Tamworth. Obviously, you've got your reasons for drawing with Tamworth, but myself included, I think most people think that Tamworth are going to get relegated this season. I don't think they've got as strong of a squad to stay up. But then a 5-0 win against 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗎, who most people think are going to be in the playoffs. So what happened there? Mike?
Still not overly sure. At half time, I was kind of looking, going, "This isn't a 4-0 game. What's going on? I don't understand." But we were just great. We were everything that we were hoping. Things were going in other games that they're not. But yeah, that game we were literally on fire, and everyone was doing their part, and it was all coming off. That start, that part of it was great, but since then, not so. But yeah, no, the 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗎 game was very, very good. It did worry us a little bit because last season we on our opening game of the season, we won 5-1 against Notts County, and then this year, home game of the season, we win 5-0. It's like, oh god, what happened last year? But never mind, it doesn't matter. It's just a whole new season, whole new squad.
Well, yeah, I don't think back-to-back relegations on the cards for Sutton this season. But what I wanted to talk about was, from an outside perspective, it looks like quite a disappointing start for Sutton. A lot of people said that they would be up there. And, some people are putting them top 4, top 3 positions. Myself, I think I put you around 10th or something like that. So do you think it's been a disappointing start to the season? Because now you're on a 3-game losing streak, and I think 2 draws before that or something like that. So it's a bit of a drought for wins. So do you think it's been a disappointing start to the season for Sutton?
So again, this is split the sort of fan base a little bit, because there's lots of expectations. Lots of people were saying, "Oh, that's it. Sutton are going to go back up. They're going to be a force." A lot of people didn't realise that we only have 3 players from last year, 4 maybe, but one of them was a reserve backup keeper. So we have a whole new squad, 18, 19 new players, and it's always going to take time. You can't just go, well, they were relegated, therefore they're favourites. Yeah. I wanted personally a season where it was a bit more fun going to football and winning more than you're losing, or at least having a go at it. I wanted a tilt at the playoffs myself, but I wasn't overly going to cry if it didn't happen. I've been lucky enough to speak to a couple of different members of the board and some of the investors, and whilst obviously we want promotion, what they've said is there's a lot of changes we're going to be making at the club over the next couple of years, and a lot of them will be a lot easier to do actually in National League than in the Football League. So they're not they obviously want promotion, but they're not going to overly cry if it doesn't happen this season, because it will happen as far as they're concerned. But yeah, three losses on the spin, 2 of them 3-0, and we didn't look good in those last 2 at all. Against Forest Green, again, you can argue that they've recruited well some of their players. I think 3 of their players are on combined all of our squad together. So we kind of knew they were going to be big, physical, and strong. But we matched them mostly. But for whatever reason, one of our most experienced players decided not to put the winger into the stand and let them cross the ball for a last-minute goal. But overall, yeah, it's one of those at school you'd be saying must try harder. Steve's a bit annoyed, you can tell from his last couple of press interviews, but I'm sure it will come good. This is a young group. There's a lot of potential in there. But yeah, I would have preferred at least 1 or 2 more draws and hopefully a win on the board since. But it's a long season. We'll see.
Well, it's also been a difficult start to the season for Southend as well. So we're both coming in, both really needing a win. So I think it'll make for a good game. And you said about it's splitting the fan base, and I think Southend starts the season has really split the fan base as well, because some of us, including myself, are sort of on the side of things where it's like give them time and it will all be all right. And we've had 2 pretty good results and brilliant performances in our last 2 games. One was against Eastleigh where we won 2-0, and that was a brilliant performance. And Oldham at their ground, which is always a tricky game, and we play really well there. So, we're starting to pick things up, which doesn't sound great for you maybe, but, not the greatest of starts to the season for us either. So, yeah, it's interesting that we seem like we're in the same boat. We've said that we're both United, so, both SUFC. So,
both split fan base. I mean, have you heard Dean Brennan's interview?
Oh, yeah, I did hear that.
I mean, that was different, interesting.
Yeah, it was
I mean, there's a lot of stuff I'm sitting there going, he's not wrong.
No.
But should you be doing that?
Yeah, it's a weird one with that interview. If anyone hasn't seen it, Dean Brennan basically ran the riot act to Barnet fans, saying all sorts of things about how bringing 900 to a home game is terrible, and just basically slating the fans, which I'm not against it really. He's just being honest. And when we went to Barnet the other week, I mean, they had about 1,000 there, and we bought about 1,600. So when you put it into perspective that they're meant to be, one of the favourites to win the league, probably the favourite to win the league, 900 at a home game is awful, really. I know it was midweek, but yeah, it's awful. So yeah, it's just a bit crazy, that interview with Dean Brennan.
It was the moaning as well. He was not happy with the moaning at all. It was it was an interesting watch. I mean, I know there's a short clip that's gone around, but the full 7 minutes is quite funny, because I did feel for the interviewer who kept trying to steer it onto track, and he just kept bringing it back to this. I was like, oh dear. Don't you dare edit this.
That was the funniest.
Yeah, sorry, I sidetracked you there, sorry.
That's no worries. It's a National League podcast as well, so it's all right. We can talk about National League. But yeah, the interviewer was, you could just see him really wanting to talk about keep it on track and stop him from talking about the fans. And he just kept going back to it. I think he even said that if any fans want to come to his house and have a cup of tea, they're welcome to, which is quite an invitation.
Come and have a cup of tea and explain why you're wrong, and buy your drinks and your sweets.
Yeah,
sweets got to do with it. I mean, the overall message is right. Moaning isn't going to help anyone. I don't know what you do for a living or what most people do for a living, but imagine having someone screaming at you every time you're not quite at it. So afterwards, by all means, go for it. But we're supporters, and the idea is you support, and there's no point supporting when it's going well, because that's easy. And by no means am I saying things are bad, but people are very quick to turn. So we were well beat us after Altrincham, and now all of a sudden we're going to get a double, triple relegation and all sorts. So it's some people just have no perspective on the bigger picture.
No, I think every fan base has a small minority, sometimes bigger minorities than others, but it's usually a minority that just love to moan. Sometimes you just think, why do you even watch football if that's all you want to do? And I completely agree with you, because we've not really had the worst of starts to the season. We've only lost one game, and it was against Barnet at their ground this season. So it's not really the worst of, a lot of games we should have won. We should have won the Oldham game. We should have won the Hartlepool game. These are games that we should have won. But on a different day, maybe we would have. And at the end of the day, we've got a lot of issues that we're still trying to sort out, deep-rooted issues. And we've got expectations. I was talking to Chris Phillips from the Southend Echo yesterday, and we were talking about how there's expectations on Southend now that there weren't before. And, fans are now suddenly expecting us to win the league when last season we were bottom of the league for a bit and then managed to build our way up. So it's just, it's a different season.
Yeah, it's odd. We're just as a general, most football supporters are just odd. Why do we stand out in the pouring rain watching this and questioning our life choices? But yeah, no, it is also. I think one of our old managers used to say it's 90% rubbish, but we're here for the 10%. And that's the bit that we love. So.
Yeah, that's very true. And why do we do 600-mile round trips in a day to see us draw 1-0 and then come away from it going, 1-0 was brilliant, yeah, great day.
I don't leave the M25. That's it. I'm like, no. I'm if it's for me, if it's a longer trip than the match is, I'm like, I'm going to slack it off this time. I'm not doing it. So I'll let all the young'uns do it.
Fair enough. Are you coming to Southend on Saturday?
No, I won't be. I've got birthday weekend, not mine, but birthday weekend. So
fair enough. Fair enough, Mike. Well, I say this all the time, but when I talk to different people, it's something that I mention. I live in Kent, and obviously Southend's in Essex, so it's quite a trek for me to a home game. But yeah, I just sort of when there's games such as Ebbsfleet and stuff, it's actually closer to a home game for me. So it's more like a home game, really.
We've got a fan who's been coming years and years, and he now lives in Wales. I think near Swansea, and he still does the trips to Gandrine Lane. So, yeah, it's sort of 5 a.m. starts to get on the National Express, and he did a few last season. He was definitely questioning some life choices at that point when he was on his way home. But yeah, it is just insane what people do.
I can't quite top jump from Swansea, but that is pretty amazing. So moving on, one question I wanted to ask is, we've touched on it briefly, but obviously you've spoken about going from League Two to National League. How big obviously it's early in the season, so you need to see how things develop as well. But so far, how big do you think the gap has been and the step down has been from the League Two to the National League?
Well, don't forget we were non-league club for 123 years, so we know the non-league, so it was a change in the league for us. But there's little things you can get away with more that you're not punished. Like last season, we were literally being punished for pretty much every mistake. I know we've lost the last couple of games, but Dagenham theoretically could have had 5 or 6 last night. Was it last night? No, night before. I mean, we could have, if we were lucky, had 3 or 4 as well. So, but yeah, some of the mistakes that you make, you get away with a bit more. But yeah, we were never going to be the kind of club that came down going, oh, we don't deserve to be here. I know the media team are causing a little bit of outrage with a club trying to get back to the EFL diary type thing, but I did say, you do realise we could be put in day 2000. They're like, yeah, it's fine, whatever, we don't mind. But for me, it's slightly smaller crowds, but still slightly better vibe. And I miss some of the old days where you could literally just walk around, chat to each other, and all the rest of it. So that doesn't happen so much at National League now anymore. It's getting more and more professional. But for me, it's not too much of a gap. Sort of definitely the lower end of League Two and the higher end of National League are very, very similar teams.
Well, yeah, and as you said, National League is getting more professional. But I always love National League, and as much as I want Southend to go on and get promoted and go into League Two, but when you really think about it, besides all going to Wembley and winning the playoffs or winning the league or whatever it is, that would be brilliant and great memories. But really, I love the National League. It's a nice league. It's when you go into League Two, obviously we haven't been there in a little while, but I don't know. There's something about National League that I just like. It's just proper
Yeah.
football to me.
Our size clubs, you'll end up at a position where you're promoted to, and it's above your status, and you'll end up losing more than you win, and it's not fun anymore. So that's why I was like, actually, I'd rather have a season or two of just like we're enjoying football again. And yeah, there's loads of things that when you go up, great, fantastic, you get more money from Sky and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But it just goes on to other things. Like you've got to have certain things. Like when we went up, we had to pick up the pitch, which was a perfectly good pitch, but we had to take it up, and it cost us 600,000 or something. So therefore, we couldn't invest in players because we had to spend so much on the pitch. Then there's other bits you got to do off the pitch. So there's all sorts of things you've got to pay out for. Obviously, your club's got a lot of the infrastructure there already, so it wouldn't make a difference to you. But Bromley would have had to pay out a load. So again, they'll struggle maybe on getting some of the players. And then when you're up, the players want more money as well. So it doesn't really help you. But no one's going to ever turn it down. You're always going to want to be up as far as you can.
Yeah, well, I know I said that I love the National League, but I do think Southend, really our level should be higher than the National League. And I think we'll get back there one day, but we're bigger enough of a club to be League 2, League 1 level. Really, I think probably League 1's probably about our level that we should be at, really. So, yeah, hopefully we get back there, but I wouldn't mind a little bit extra time in National League. I like National League. It's a good league to be in, I think. So I'd like to talk about Sutton and the season as a whole. So what do you think? Obviously, we've spoken about a bit of a slow start for Sutton, but what do you think of Sutton's chances this season? Do you think you should be aiming for playoffs or mid-table, or what's the aims for this season, do you think?
So the players and management have said basically they want promotion, and that's what they're here for. That's what they're expecting, which I think perhaps they've raised expectations by saying that. A lot of people would be expecting playoffs as minimum. I kind of would like a bash at the playoffs, whether we make it or not overly fussed. People are setting sort of top 10, top half as minimum. But then there's other people who are genuinely saying, no, we could struggle. It's a whole new team. A lot of players from the division below, a lot of under 21s. So it could be a real hard learning curve this year. But yeah, I'm sticking with, I'd like a tilt towards the playoffs, whether we make it or not. I'm not overly fussed, but a nice little tilt towards it. But yeah, the management are definitely on the promotion track. But then the board level, they're like, well, we'll take what we take. It's not to do with us. We'll make sure everything's ready for promotion. But if it doesn't happen, we're not gonna panic.
Well, I think that's really interesting. That's quite. It's more ambitious than I thought. I thought probably the aims would be for you to probably finish about mid-table, 10th, about there. But if they're aiming for promotion, then fair enough.
As I say, that's the players and the management are talking about promotion. But then Steve, the manager, does kind of caveat that with saying, well, 23 other teams are also trying for promotion or saying they want promotion. So whether he truly believes it or not, I don't know. But we'll see. I say I wouldn't even blink at 10th, but I'd rather it be a 10th where we've just faded from the playoffs rather than a 10th where we've just scraped into top 10.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'd also like to talk about, obviously it's a Southend podcast, and I don't know how much you know about Southend, but if it's always interesting to hear, even if you don't know much about Southend, just an outside sort of perspective on Southend, because we've all got our opinions on Southend. Obviously, we all know quite a lot about Southend since we're Southend fans, but when I have somebody on who's not a Southend fan, I always like to hear what they have to say about Southend. So what do you think about our chances this season? Do you agree with the more negative of the fans? We're saying, we're not looking good, or what do you think of our chances this season?
Right, I'm going to be really honest, really limited on my knowledge, so I wouldn't like to say anything. But when looking at the teams in division, you were the one of the teams that I was looking at, going, okay, well they'll be one of the bigger teams, teams we've got to look out for. So with very limited knowledge, other than I know them. But yeah, no, you have some takeover issues.
Yep.
Recently, yeah. So, I mean, from what I remember on that, a lot of your more negative fans should be kind of going back a sort of 12 to 18 months, thinking we weren't going to have a club tomorrow. So it's a case of be happy what you got. But yeah, I honestly don't know. But you were one of the names I looked at, thinking I know them. I know they're a big team. And when your transfer embargo was lifted, I was a little bit disappointed, thinking, "Oh man, they're gonna get some good players now and have a go at this."
Yeah, well, yeah, as you said, a lot of fans, and it's something that myself and others have been saying. How a lot of the fans who are being negative. It's not overwhelming negativity. Most people are on the same boat as myself and many others in saying that we didn't even know if we're going to have a club last season. So the fact that we're even playing games and we're not even playing that badly is a real it's a miracle, really. So yeah, you're right. Those fans should sort of be grateful, but yeah, we had all sorts of issues. It was not a good time because it was just torturous for months. I mean, the issues have been going on for like 10, 15 years now, because Ron Martin came into the club in 2001. 2001 was when he was made chairman. So obviously they've been going on 23 years, I'd say, since he got in. But he's gone now, so that's one thing to focus on. But yeah, it was just horrible because we were so confident it would be done this week, and then it wasn't, and then we were confident it'd be done next week, and that went on for literally about a year, probably, of us thinking it'd be done that week. And yeah, countless court cases, and it was a bit of a crazy time, really. But I'm just hoping that now that that's settled, we can focus. And Justin Rees, who's our new owner, Australian, he did an interview with the club today. It literally came out today, and he did an interview with the club, just sort of talking to them about our situation and what's going to happen in the future. And that was such a breath of fresh air for Southend fans, because something so little as him just talking to us is something that we're not used to with Ron Martin.
I mean, even if they give you, I haven't heard that interview, but even if they give you some bad news and some okay, this is a problem, that's a problem, at least you're hearing it and you go, okay, we can now deal with this, we can understand it. And but when it's all hidden from you, it's a nightmare. I mean, we're very lucky. Our board are really open. Generally, most people can walk up to 3 or 4 board members any given match day, just have a little chat and tell them their feelings, which is completely mental. Shouldn't be able to happen, but it does. So yes, we've always been lucky. So whenever we see these kind of things, we're like, God, how does that get to happen? We just don't understand it. But I'm glad it's sorted.
I'll be honest, Mike. Obviously, I did quite a lot of research into Sutton before the podcast. But one thing I don't know too much about is the board of Sutton. So I would like to talk a little bit about that. If you could just because I'm not really sure what is the structure of that like. Is it made up of Sutton United fans? It's a bit like Southend's consortium, or what is the board makeup of Sutton?
So we're known as a fans-owned club. Hasn't been that way for a little while, but the chairman, up until recently, the vice chairman, the sort of secretary or chief operating officer, and quite a few people on the board are massive long-term Sutton fans. There was a point, when we went into the Football League, there was a point there several members of the board had been at the game we played against Leeds back in early 70s as fans. So they've all been there through the whole thing. Most of them come up as fans through the supporters club. But obviously, as things go by, we need investment. So we got some outside investment, and then that kind of has continued. What has been great with the investment that we've got is they've all become involved, and as I've said to them, sort of suckered into it, because it's a money investment, and the one who's invested the most money, I did kind of say, well, my knowledge of investments is you usually get something back, not keep sinking money into it. And he was like, yeah, that's what I thought as well. But they've all kind of bought into Sutton United. Yeah. There's a lot of things that we do, like I mentioned about being able to approach various members of the board. It's just ridiculous. You shouldn't be able to do that at a professional football club. And there's a lot of other things behind the scenes that they're trying to professionalise. And obviously we've got some vintage fans like myself who've been doing the same thing for decades, not quite wanting some of those changes to take place. Although we understand the need for change, it's like, okay, it can all change, but my spot where I stood for years and years and years has been kind of changed there and out, and it's going to be the away fans bit. And I'm like, well, that's my spot. I don't think that should change. So there's loads of little things that we're kind of having to go along with. But yeah, they've all bought into the Sutton way. Even, I don't know if you heard recently, Paul Brunson has got a stake. He pulled the name out of a hat on TV just to go to a match, came to us. I called it to him a publicity stunt that went horribly wrong, because he came along, absolutely loved it, and his son loved it, and he came to another game and without cameras or anything, and again was just the whole atmosphere and everything was just fantastic, and he ended up buying a stake. So when I spoke to him first, I was like, you seem to be living life on fast forward, where you're getting so excited about Sutton United. And the next time I spoke to him, I said, did you think that was a challenge? Why have you invested money? So he's now put money, and he's obviously, he doesn't know anything about football. He's quite happy to admit that, but he does know the media side. He does know a lot of publicity side. So there's a lot of things coming that he's going to be able to kind of push for us. So yeah, they're people that aren't well known because they haven't been around a long time. But every single one of them that I've spoken to have genuinely certainly seemed, and I don't think they're that good at actors, certainly seem to buy into the Sutton United ethos and just get absolutely taken up by the whole thing and end up loving the club and going, I was supposed to be making money out of this, not keep investing. So, but yeah, it's no longer a fans owned, but it's definitely a fans run club.
Well, I think that's brilliant, and with the consortium of Southend, a lot. Well, I think there's nine members. I think one of them's an Australian who, we love him, and he's a Southend fan now. But before, he didn't really know too much about Southend until about 2 years ago. I don't think he even had heard of Southend probably until about 2 years ago. And then the rest are Southend fans. So. And that was a really important thing to us because of all the horrible stuff we had gone through. With Ron Martin, who really was only ever focused and only ever set on selling our ground because he was a businessman. He was he wanted to sell our stadium for money, and that's all he really cared about. So getting Southend fans in means that hopefully won't happen again. So yeah, it's a really important thing for a football club to have fans input. I definitely think.
Absolutely.
So I would now like to talk about the game itself. So something I always ask is what Sutton players should we be looking out for on Saturday?
Right, so as mentioned, they're all quite new, and some have been blowing hot and cold, but ones that have stood out at the moment is Josh Coley, who was with us last year, has kind of really stepped up as a senior player, and he's doing well with it. He's starting or coming off the bench. Jaden Harris has been just immense. He's playing sort of either second striker, if you like, or attacking midfielder, but he has just got pace and acceleration, and he will be in midfield 1 second and then just literally pressing your keeper the next. And you're like, I didn't even see him coming. Got Lewis Simper in midfield, just keeping everything ticking over, and then he's back in training, but we're not 100% sure. Dylan Da Silva may well be in the sort of squad. I'm not sure, but it's one of those where any one of them could suddenly surprise and say this has been brilliant, and suddenly go for it and show us what they're really made of. But they've all ticked over nicely last 2 games aside.
Well, yeah, and some of those names I think are pretty big names in the space. Some of those names I've definitely heard of and know they're good players. So yeah, that's not looking good for us on Saturday then.
Well, we just come off the back of 3 defeats, so I would imagine they've been running. Well, yeah, today they were off day off yesterday. I would imagine they've been punished a bit today, so they might just be knackered. You know that. You don't know.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so for Southend's perspective. So, one person I would like to talk about. I'm not going to get him in now, but one person I would like to talk about. I mentioned him before the podcast. Obviously, quite a fan favourite in the Southend space. He was, Steve Arnold. So I think we've got to talk about him briefly because he's a Southend podcast. He obviously played for Southend for quite some time. Well, not too long, but quite a few years, and he was a real fan favourite for Southend. We all loved him. If he'd do anything, probably even if he conceded, to be honest, we'd shout Steve. So how good has Steve Arnold been for Sutton?
He's been great. So when he came to us, he was fighting for number one spot. Then he got injured quite early on. And he had a kind of a hip injury that kind of didn't seem to solve itself. And then we got in Dean Brennan on loan from Reading, who was a former fan favourite, we'll put it that way. And it didn't quite work out the second spell, but he kept getting picked, and none of us were really sure why. But eventually he did get replaced, and Steve then came in at the tail end of last season. Where we were struggling, and it was just brilliant. Great performances, great media afterwards, where he'd made loads of saves in the game, but we'd lost 1-0, and he was just like, "Okay, thanks, but we lost." So it's like, "Oh yeah, we like you." But yeah, he's a great shot stopper. He's had a couple of moments in the last couple of weeks, so you never know whether. Because Steve does like to chop and change things. Steve Morrison, sorry, likes to chop and change things. So you never actually know. I would imagine he will be in goal because he's been clearly number one. But he's got a bit of walkabout on one of the games, and we were like, "Where are you going? Get back!" And I think two of them actually he came charging out and couldn't get back in time. But yeah, no, he's a great shot stopper, great guy. Seen him around a couple of times, and whenever he does like the media stuff, he's always great, and he does kind of give the crowd a nice little wave and a clap at either half as well. But yeah, he seems like a really nice guy, and he has been playing really well until the whole team have had a little bit of a brain fart the last few weeks.
Yeah, he's a brilliant keeper, and at this level, I mean, he was just fantastic for us. But it's funny you said about the injury, because that's one of the reasons why he not lost his place at Southend, because he definitely didn't, and he didn't leave Southend because he lost his place by any means, but that's part of the reason why our keeper now got a shout in the first team, because he got injured, and we had this young keeper, Colin, and we were like, let's give him a go because we don't really have many other options. We played him, and it's just absolutely fantastic, and really, maybe Steve will be up there, but I think probably Colin's probably the best keeper in the league, and people always overlook him when they talk about the best keepers in the league, but then they always come to Roots Hall and then go, maybe you've got a point, because he's just that good. So it's funny you said about him getting injured, because that's probably why our keeper now is in the first team. So
well, I think we've got we've got Jack Sims, who I think was with you guys as well at some stage, because I think he was with Steve with you guys from donkeys ago. So so if Steve does get replaced, it'll be by Jack. So.
All right. Well, one last thing really to ask you. It's always an interesting one, and I don't want to keep you too much longer. So this will be the last thing I asked today, because I've just realised that you could probably see my window in the back, and when we started this, it was probably light, and now it's dark. So it hasn't been that long, everyone, but it's just that time of day when it gets dark really quickly. So the last thing that I need to ask, Mike, is what is your score prediction for Saturday?
Okay, well, sorry to drag this one out. I will say 2-1 to Sutton. And the reason I'm saying 2-1 to Sutton is I'm on a streak of 63 games in a row where I've got it wrong. And 2-1 is got to be one of the most popular scorelines. And I'm sticking with 2-1 until I get one of these right. So don't put any money on it. But 55 games last year, I started a prediction league. And I thought that would be fun. 55 games last year and 8 games so far this year. I've got it wrong. I wasn't always doing 2-1. I was doing some kind of mad scores at the start, but I thought, no, I've got to do it properly, but not got one right. So don't put any money on 2-1, but that's my prediction.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Mike. This has been brilliant. I've
More
really
than well.
appreciated it. I'll leave your links in the description below, so anybody can go and check out the Sutton podcast. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on, Mike. And yeah, when we play you again, I'm sure you're always welcome back on.
Thanks a lot, Finn. Good luck for most of the season.
Thank you. Yeah, just not tomorrow, not Saturday. Sorry. So yeah, thank you, Mike. If anybody has enjoyed, please make sure to like and subscribe. Check out Mike's Sutton podcast below, and I'll see you all on the next one.